Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. So the first item of business is election of chair. Are there any nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate Mark. Thank you.
And is there a seconder for that? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, Mark, congratulations. You're in the chair.
Right, thank you very much for that. Just wait for Caroline to sit down. So, on to the main agenda items for this evening. Item 3, apologies for absence. Do we have any for this evening?
Apologies from Dave Edmonds and Pauline Jorgensen, and Moses Ngumwene is here as a substitute chair.
Brilliant, thank you. Welcome, Moses. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 4th of March. Does anyone have any questions or matters to raise from those? If not, can I have a show of hands to accept? Thank you very much indeed. Right, we shall move onwards. I'll sign those later. We are now moving on to any declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest to declare in any item on the agenda this evening? Nope. Excellent. Question time. Item 6 and 7. Do we have any public or member questions?
No public and no member questions, Chair.
Okay, brilliant. Moving on. We are now going to look at the arts and culture update. Mark, I believe you're going to introduce this, and then we have your officers online. Just double checking. Yeah, Rianne.
Yes, thank
Excellent.
you.
14.
Yep, correct.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm so glad we're seeing you with our arts and culture strategy immediately after our Forest of Imagination celebration weekend. And also to introduce Rianne Hayes. Rianne probably doesn't need any introduction, but she's retiring at the end of next month after 24 years of service. Her persistence and her perseverance has served us proud, and her pragmatism belies her tenacity and guile, is what I've written here, Rianne. So, thank you, Rianne. I mean, can we applaud in here again? Rianne, I'll let you introduce the rest of the team.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was really, really kind for those kind comments. So the rest of our team is here tonight. We've got Dex Levick, who works in our economic development team, and Resh Thorpe, who works in the climate emergency team and has been loaned for a very short amount of time to work on the Forest of Imagination, and we'll give an update on that later on. So, shall I continue, Mark, or did you want to do an introduction into the item?
No, if you continue, then we'll get questions afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a presentation that we're just about to Resh will share with us. There's a number of parts to the update that we wanted to present this evening, because quite a lot's been going on, not least the Forest of Imagination. First of all, just wanted to talk about how important art and culture is on our community and our residents, and the value that it can bring. Often it's not obvious, but the work that's been done on organisations like the Arts Council has found that it contributes somewhere in the region of 10.6 billion to the UK economy. There's a thriving UK creative economic sector worth 27 billion, and we're beneficiaries of that in Wokingham with the Shinfield Studios and all of the development that's gone on there, and the films that will be produced and made in that area, and the jobs that that will bring in time. We know that arts and culture helps to tackle social injustice, not just bringing prosperity, but bringing communities together. And we've got 3 projects that we'll talk about later to demonstrate how this works. So that's Forest of the Imagination, Project Soothe, and Creative Health. Some other examples on slide 2 are that we know, for example, that arts and culture has been supported by the SEND network. It allows people to have a non-verbal medium in which they can communicate, but it helps with a feeling of well-being and empowerment for those people or those individuals in the SEND spectrum. The Mental Health Foundation has said that health can enhance mental state, it lowers stress, it boosts happiness, and promotes social relationships. And there's lots of examples where it can help. For example, Reading has got a project which is helping reduce absenteeism in schools. So there's lots of advantages to arts and cultures. And for that was one of the reasons why we developed the Arts and Culture Strategy, which runs from 2021 until 2030. And our key priorities within that strategy is to enhance cultural identity and a sense of place. We know that arts and culture can help create a sense of place. If you look at places like Northern Ireland, where you've got the filming of Game of Thrones, for example, has helped develop a place and attract people and visitors to that area. Fostering social interaction and community cohesion. And we know from our very own experiences of the development that we've got in Gorse Ride, that where we're now working with that community to build some artwork into the development, which is funded by the developer Waits. It's really brought the community together on a project that they're really enjoying and working together. So to some extent, it acts as glue. Improving health and well-being, which we'll talk about shortly, developing opportunities for children and young people, supporting economic growth and maximising partnerships and collaboration. And through art and culture, we've been able to develop some really good partnerships with our local businesses, such as the British Museum, with Shinfield Studios, but also with the University of Reading as well, and we'll talk about some of those examples in a moment. So if I hand very quickly then over to you, Dex.
Yeah, thank you, Rhian. And Resh, are you able to move the slides along? Sorry, they're stuck on my screen. Thank you. Okay, so just quickly running through with a couple of slides and what we've currently done / are doing in terms of the arts and culture piece. So 2 main projects that Rhian's already alluded to, both Project Soothe and Creative Health. The first of these was a arts-based programme with the aim of enhancing mental health awareness and communication, specifically within our refugee communities in the borough, focusing on the Ukrainian, Afghani and Hong Kong communities. This was a series of workshops that ran over the last year in schools, Bullmarsh, Embrook, West End and Pigott to be specific, where the children were taken through effectively producing artwork based on images that reminded them of home. And these sessions were really well received by the pupils and the teachers alike. Creative Health, in a similar vein, was an arts-based project using movement and dance in collaboration with the Zoologic Theatre, the Zoologic Dance Theatre. This allowed young people to express their stories of resettling in the borough. They discussed them early in the project and then used that to sort of inform a dance piece, which was ultimately performed to families, which really highlighted their achievements. So two great projects there that were really well received. If you go to the next slide, please, Resh. Forest of Imagination, I'll touch on just in name because Resh is going to be going on to that later, but I'll finish my slides with university partnerships. So as part of an ongoing partnership work or piece of partnership work with Screen Berkshire, the council is actively looking to collaborate with the University of Reading and Shinfield Studios to develop a film skills hub, or a plan for a film skills hub at Thames Valley Science Park. Numerous benefits of this, some being a space for post-production, training routes into a variety of industry entrants, and these will be delivered partly by Screen Berkshire. And we've also employed a consultant to do a feasibility study for this and produce a brochure to obtain funding. So that's just some of the work that's going on, and I'll pass over to Resh for Forest of Imagination.
Thank you, Dex. So I'll now provide an overview of the Forest of Imagination project. As Mark mentioned earlier, we've had a fantastic weekend of events for this project, so I hope you'll enjoy the slides that are following for the weekend's achievements. So the council partnered with Barnspire University and the House of Imagination to bring Woking Borough's Forest of Imagination 2025. The Forest of Imagination events first originated in Bath back in 2014, and every year has inspired people to explore environmental issues through creativity and artistic impression. So Woking Borough's first Forest of Imagination programme has delivered nature-themed art and cultural experiences to residents from around the borough since November last year. The project finished with last week with a 4-day celebration at Dinton Pastures Country Park, where schools and residents were invited to immerse themselves in the forest experience and take part in a series of free creative workshops that have allowed them to foster a deeper connection with the natural world and raise awareness about the climate emergency at the same time. The project was fully funded by a grant from UK government through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, or UK SPF for short, which is a fund that aims to improve pride in place and increase life chances across the UK, investing in communities and place and people and skills. And the fund was successfully granted based on WBC submitting an application on a select number of chosen UK SPF deliverables. So I'll just touch briefly here. So with the programme, we aim to bring Woking Borough together through the arts and culture strategy and education to help imagine and create a better, more sustainable future. So trying to embed those values from our Woking community's vision that sort of overarches all of the strategies that come through them within the council. So the programme drew from key priorities and connected strategies, which are listed at the bottom that you can see. And the idea was, by doing this, that it would not only deliver against the UK SPF requirements set, but also deliver against our council aims in a far more connective and inclusive way, so that we were touching on more than just one strategy. The programme was split into 6 key areas, and each work stream is highlighted here. So we recruited artists in Berkshire as part of the Artist CBT programme, which included creative students from the University of Reading. So they were there to help support the creative work streams. These artists have actually been provided with professional training from the House of Imagination to deliver engaging activities for local schools and our community groups. As part of the school's outreach programme, pupils in 14 primary, secondary and SEND schools across the borough have participated in creative workshops led by the artists since January. In November and December, members of local community organisation groups were also invited to workshops where they were inputted to the design of the art installations for the 4-day event that reflected the beauty of nature within the borough. And throughout March, there was also a series of creative activities open to the public. Woking Borough's Forest of Imagination finished last week at Dinton, and the first 2 days were solely for schools. And the Saturday and Sunday was open to everyone in the borough and from outside the borough even, and included the unveiling of the new Century Art installations. There was also a range of creative workshops, performances and digital experience for visitors to enjoy. The main aim of the programme was that all of the events were free. They were accessible by all ages, and that anybody, regardless of any accessibility issues or special educational needs, were able to access all of the programme and the installations. The programme has been evaluated against specific UK SPF KPIs, including specific evaluation on the wider benefits delivered to the community, which will be submitted as a report to UK SPF. The longer term legacy of the project will be defined with the creation of a network of community champion-led initiatives that will be established and continue after the project ends. And the legacy and the community use of the art installations and the forest shelter at Dinton will last for at least 5 years, if not longer. So touching on the schools outreach programme that began in January, this encouraged children to explore their connection to nature through the unique ecology at Dinton Pastures and the wider Wokingham Borough through creative learning journey. And this creative learning journey was specifically designed to support creative and real sensory rich inquiries with children. So we're really trying to tap in to not just everyday learning, but really be inclusive in the way that these workshops were delivered. The children were able to build connections between art, nature and science through local biodiversity, but also to understand the impact of climate change and empower them to explore and share their roles in the natural and human communities within the borough. A dedicated learning resource on these workshops will also be available for all schools in the borough to support art education with a connection to nature in the coming months as well. And the feedback from learning staff has been really, really positive, and it particularly highlights how all pupils have been able to engage with the programme inclusively together in and outside of the classroom. The creative journey has worked with 420 pupils from schools within the borough that have a high ratio of SEND pupils or are in the most harder to reach areas of our borough. During March, a wide-ranging array of free activities took place across the borough, so we were really careful not to limit it to just Wokingham town centre, but widen the scope, offering something for everyone in the community. These activities included spoken word performances, immersive story worlds, ecological storytelling and drawing sessions with well-known illustrators, as well as nature-inspired activities such as walk-in workshops and architectural creations. The programme consisted of a series of unique creative workshops utilising community spaces across the borough, such as our libraries and community centres, and they were well attended. The programme, as I've mentioned previously, ended last weekend with a 4-day celebratory event featuring a trail of new sensory installations at Dinton Pastures, which have been co-created by professional artists in collaborations with the schools involved and the community outreach programmes. The 22nd and the 23rd of May, which was the Thursday and Friday, invited all 14 schools to take part in a wide range of creative workshops and engage with the installations that they'd been part of. And then over the weekend, these were then open to the public. And the next few slides, I'm hoping, will give you a flavour of the Forest of Imagination celebration. And all the photos that you will see in the next few slides have been taken over the 4 days of last weekend. So there were 8 installations to see over the 4 days, some temporary and some which will remain permanently at Dinton Pastures. There are 2 natural wayfinder map installations, one at each main entrance to the park, marking where the installations are. There is a walk-in with trail. These are 20 signs, each with a reflective question trail, inspired by the community outreach programme. So it's designed to inspire a connection with nature and appreciation for the natural world and the protection of it. The insect vision are interactive totems to explore how insects see differently from us. They're designed to be sensory, so they're made from coloured perspex and different sensory textures so that you can see the natural environment and surroundings from an insect's point of view. And they're also accessible to view at different heights. The Willow Crowns, a temporary installation, will allow visitors to explore and appreciate the trees within the environment and the roles that they play in our ecosystem. The biodiversity totems celebrate the local species found in Dinton Pastures, and these have all been inspired by the school's outreach programme. The What We Can Learn from a Drop, this is a sound art installation that was nestled among the trees, which explores water and tree life and the sounds projected through them. The Woven Together installation was a colourful string installation which started off as a bare wooden framework, and over the weekend visitors have been weaving and adding to the installation. So young and old weaving the threads to connect the 17 circular parish branches of our borough. the Mother Nature Supper Club, which is a giant table installation for the community to eat, connect and socialise with each other. Over the 4 days, there was a culinary and theatrical experience here, exploring nature and climate change. And after this weekend, the table will be moved to be part of the forest shelter. And then finally, the forest shelter. This was the wow piece of the art installations and designed to be used as an outdoor classroom in the future and a community space, a place for wet days and seeking shade and for community gatherings and school activities. So the creative workshops over the 4 days have engaged our diverse community in a very unique, special and creative way. And they've all been free, accessible, and have ranged from fun art workshops to imaginative performances and digital experiences, whilst getting messy with nature at the same time. The feedback so far has been amazing, and every day we're receiving more and more. All of the feedback received will be incorporated in the evaluation report that's being produced over the next month. And I'll leave you on this slide here, which is some of the feedback that's been posted on our social media over the last few days in response to the Forest of Imagination 2025 Woking Borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Resh.
So I'll now hand over to Rhiannon, who's going to talk through the next steps and legacy of the programme.
Well, just to say that, what we want to do is build on the legacy of the Forest of Imagination, working with our community champions, schools, and to see how we can further get art and culture to contribute to deepening engagement, working with residents. But the way we're going to have to do this is going to be through partners. So we will develop and build our relationships with University of Reading, National History Museum and Shinfield Studios. We've already got a really good base with working with these organisations, and they've all said that they want to work with us in the future too, particularly on this particular agenda. So that's all we've got at the moment. Thank you.
Stephen.
Really wanted to say something, if I may. I know this is perhaps slightly out of order. I'm not a member of the committee, and I'm here for a completely different item. But I really did want to thank Rhiannon and Resh and Dex and all of the officers who volunteered to come over the weekend and gave their time for nothing to make this such a great success. I want to thank Mark and Prue, who did an absolutely sterling job as executive members in helping guide this through. I went there on Saturday and I was absolutely bowled over. It is so impressive. And I think it brought a lump to my throat when I thought about what happened on Thursday and Friday, when children from our schools, including disabled kids from Haddington and other schools, and children from the most disadvantaged areas of the borough, all there having the opportunity to have their creative talents realised. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So I think this has been an enormous success, and I just wanted to record my thanks to everyone involved.
Thank you for that. I'd echo that as well. I think it's going to be a tough act to follow. What do we do next? But I think I visited on Saturday. I must have spoken to 15 or 20 different families, and all of them echo the same comment. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. It was amazing. And when you, I think people were also making the comment about that it was free, that it was just an amazing experience. As much as I love the shelter, I think the weaving part was actually my favourite element. I think it was just fun. Right, questions around the room. Mary-Louise.
Thank you. So this was paid for by a grant from what used to be the Levelling Up Fund, and that fund was 516 grand, like £500,000.
That's right,
as I
yes.
understood, and that was all spent on the Forest of Imagination. And are we going to see a budget at some point to understand where that money went? Because it's a lot.
Yeah,
And
we can
there will be a
certainly
budget
provide you
included
with
in
a
the
budget.
evaluation.
Yeah, we will certainly provide you with that. And then it is quite a wide programme. It's not just the 4 days at the end.
Right.
There's a huge amount of work that's gone in previously,
Oh,
engaging with the schools, and that will be evident when the budget comes out.
absolutely. I mean, the risk with these kind of interventions is that they can be what we used to call in the business bungee jumps. Like, you know, someone comes in, throws some sparkle about and disappears up into these. So it will be interesting to see what your, you know, and the risk of this is that it was, you know, so shaped by the experience of what is, after all, an external consultant, because, you know, the grant associates, and the others behind Forest of Imagination have done similar things elsewhere. And I'm just asking about sort of like the involvement of teachers and, like, especially at Dinton, the nature guides, the nature teachers, the ones that take kids around, who are brilliant, long-term brilliant, and seem to be a bit sidelined, really, in this. And I mean, we know that the best kind of engagement builds on local capacity and local interest and takes time. So I just wondered sort of what longer-term impacts you see as and how you're going to measure those.
Thanks very much, Marie-Louise. I think one of the things that we wanted to start out, and you're quite right, you know, we've only had a fixed amount of funding, but we wanted to make absolutely sure that we had a legacy at the end of this. So we have built in, and I think that a lot of that was mentioned by Resh, we had to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour, is that we've created packs, we've done training, and we've brought groups along with us so that we can so that they can continue and push forward as they go. So there's hooks in there that allow us to continue this good work going forward. But I do have to say that we will be relying on partners to help us deliver this, because it was a one-off fund, and we'll have to be creative, so that's not meant as a pun, on how we look at resource to take this forward. But we do want to see it as a legacy programme that when we continue this work going forward. Have I answered all your questions there? Was there another question I think I may have missed?
Caroline.
I went to, and I thought it was an amazing event. I want to say thank you as well. I thought it was so good. Did we shout enough for the other authorities to come along and say, we want to do it as well? So.
Yeah, we've got quite close links with Reading, Borough Council and other local authorities. And I think, having spoken to Reading, it's something that we'd like to definitely talk to other local authorities across Berkshire. Reading and Slough, in terms of local authorities, tend to be, because they've got quite big urban areas, and they do have reasonably sizable arts and culture budgets, and they've got what are called NGOs in their areas, so big theatre companies compared to us, certainly. So we could probably we will benefit from partnering with them and learning from them, and we've certainly sort of been advised by them and listened to what they've got to say from their experience.
Thank you.
Just building on that, with Reading University, they've got a big anniversary coming up next year. I think it's 150, isn't it? And we were talking about a pop-up event happening there, and of course, it's actually the University of Wokingham, isn't it, really? So you know, and we involved a lot of the Reading University students, you know, being trained by our internationally renowned artists. So, as you say, it's what happens next that counts.
I want to also record my thanks, and the way, as it was a one-off budget and the way it was planned, and I think there was a lot of improvisation and innovation, and I have been approached by members from multiple communities, and the outreach, I think that was a true color which Wokingham has. And the best thing which I see during this exercise, our officers and the council have built relationship with different partners. So I think this would definitely help in the future events. So I think it's a setting stone. It's not the end, but it's a good new beginning. And if we have these in future, it would help. And thank you very much to everyone who was involved.
I'm not here for this item either, but I think Stephen was very kind to give me some of the credit. It wasn't really me, it was Mark. To see the children there on Thursday morning was fantastic. Their engagement, all the projects. Mark and I went to workshops that they did at schools beforehand to see it all coming to fruition. Their excitement as they ran about the park on Thursday, particularly Thursday morning, was fantastic. But what I wanted to say was about the legacy, because it is important there's a legacy. We've referred to some of the ongoing projects. I don't think we've made enough in the presentation so far of the community champions that are going to be there to take things on. But there's also a different sort of legacy, and that's the legacy of people's memories of that weekend. Because I have never seen so many people. You thought Saturday was busy, Sunday was absolutely heaving, and there were so many happy people. And they all said, we've never seen anything like this before. This is fantastic. This is amazing. And they will carry that with them probably forever. And that is fantastic. I had my doubts, I have to say, as the project started. Are we going to be able to deliver something? It was amazing. It was truly amazing. Everybody that I know that went was just absolutely blown over. And I also loved the weaving bit, but I also liked the drop, the what can we learn from a drop. I thought that was fantastic as well. To see all those children putting the bowls on their heads and seeing what happened when they ran under the drops was fantastic. But it was all amazing, and I was just bowled over by it.
Mary-Louise.
I think we need to remember that engagement is a process, and it is long and tedious and takes an exchange of power from both sides. It is not the delivery of a lovely day, yeah? And that we should plan the way that we do things to build on local capacity that is existing and is at threat. Yeah, we know from the NEU's latest report about what is happening to art in schools. And, you know, a lovely day is not a replacement for what has been done.
No,
yeah?
it isn't, but at least, you know,
And
you were
so,
ignoring everything that went on before.
Sorry, I was cutting you off, just let the point be made. But, Stephen, do you want to come back on it?
Just to say that I wouldn't knock a lovely day. That's actually quite a good thing to have been produced, but much, much, much more was produced than that. And you're absolutely right. Any working in partnership requires a lot of effort, a lot of sustained effort over a long period of time. I completely agree with you on that. But that's exactly what we're engaging in. Exactly. And I'm sorry that your attitude is a little bit negative, to be quite honest.
That, like, in general, Workingham Labour is in favour of children having fun broadly, and we're really glad that the children who did come did engage, did look to it. What we are asking about is this the best use of money? Yeah? And is there not a way that we can look at how we learn from doing this to make things that are deeper and more, have a longer term positive impact on more children? Yeah, it's a question that any engagement, any kind of thing like this would require, yeah? That's why you do impact assessments, and that's why you choose the widest possible way of looking at impact. And you ask questions about the nature of partnership. So that's all we're doing.
Well, I'm very pleased that Workingham Labour is not against children having fun.
So I think that there's a few things that come from it. Are there any other questions around the room or points? I'd like to just sum up by marking my thanks to Rhiannon, not just for this and for all the officers involved in it, not just for this weekend, but for the months and months and months of work that have gone into this. I'd also like to thank all of the schools and all of the staff in all of the schools that have been involved in this for months and months, all of the workshops, all the creative sessions, everything that's been done, not just for the weekend, but in the months leading up to it. You know, to see the collaboration and working of schools and officers and everybody else has been incredible as well. I think it's very difficult when people don't always necessarily see everything that's gone into the project, which kind of comes on to one of the things I'd like to ask. So I know we're having to do the sum up report back to government on the outcomes of it. I note that we haven't got a copy of the presentation that was shown tonight in mod.gov. I'm hoping that we can get that circulated to all members. I think it would be very useful for the final report back to government that has all the details and all the data in it to be circulated to the committee as well for information, because I think members should see all of that. But I think on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank everyone for all of the work that went into this incredible project, not just for the weekend, but all of the months of work that have gone into it. I've had feedback from schools that have been involved in it who have gained so much, not just in the work, but the creativity, the engagement of children, children who wouldn't necessarily ordinarily get involved in these projects, the kind of the quiet child in the room approach, who've lit up some of these experiences. So I'm grateful and thankful. Please pass on that. And Rhiannon, I don't believe we've had a vote to allow you to retire, so sorry about that, but you're not going anywhere. Joking aside, thank you for everything you've done for this and for all of the team that have been involved, and please pass on all of our thanks.
Yeah, and I would just like to mention my colleagues, Karen Yeomans and also Nikki Phillips, who worked on this project as well and done a huge amount of work for it, who can't be here this evening, so thank you.
Be interesting to see what we come up with next. But thank you very much indeed. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. But if the presentation can be circulated, I think that'd be great. I think it would also be a great point, leader, to try and figure out how we can share that knowledge with all councillors so that we can all see the kind of the summary of the output. Maybe not all of the detail, but that's for this. But I think a summary report for all members, I think, will be very, very useful. Okay. Sorry, not saying that to you. Mark's the exec member.
Can I just say thank you, team? Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, in which case then we shall move on to the next item on the agenda. You are more than welcome to stay online if you wish. I see Sean has joined us online, which is great to see. And Narinder as well. Brilliant. So the next item, agenda item 9, is the outcome of the peer review for the shared public protection services, which is the joint function between Wokingham, Bracknell Forest and West Berkshire Council. I'm not sure who's going to introduce. Prue, you were involved with the peer review, so I think you're introducing this.
I'm here because Lou now has this portfolio, but she's only had it since last Thursday. so I took part in the review, so if there's anything that you need to ask me, I'm here to answer the questions.
Brilliant. And welcome, Sean and Narinder. Are we handing straight over to one of you to lead us through this?
Yes, that's right, Chair. I'll open and then pass over to Sean, and then it's a combination of the both of us. Thank you. So, thank you very much, Chair, for opening the report for us. So the report provided to the committee outlined a detailed information in relation to oversight and information regarding the peer review that we've undertaken in relation to the public protection partnership arrangements that we have in place. So the report sets out the process and the reason for undertaking the peer review that commenced in October 24 and concluded in January 25. It was overseen by a members reference group that was made up of members from the 3 local authority councils, so Bracknell, Wokingham and West Berkshire. And as Councillor Prue Bray has just outlined, the representation for Wokingham was in fact Councillor Prue Bray. So the key officers that were involved in relation to the process, it was led by a very senior former head of shared services for public protection arrangements at Buckinghamshire and Surrey Trading Standards Services. Officer by the name of Steve Ruddy, and there was various officers within that group also taking part as overseeing the actual nuts and bolts of the process, so really looking into and digging into the detail of the arrangements within the shared service of the public protection arrangements. So the review looked at governance arrangements, the inputs and support available within the partnership arrangements, the outputs, and also value for money in relation to the public protection shared arrangements, and also options for the future, which are set out in the various segments of the report. The key recommendations, I'm just going to highlight the key recommendations, and I have observed that there is a slight error in the wording of the report, so I'm just going to clarify that for the committee. The recommendations part of the report references paragraph 41, where in fact that should say on page 23 of the report. So page 23 of the report outlines sort of the key recommendations, but just for clarity, they are in relation to rejoining of the Joint Public Protection Committee arrangements are the key recommendations. Key recommendation is also in relation to extending the current arrangements until the 31st of March 2029, and also to seek better communication with members in relation to both providing an annual update on performance of the key areas covered by the performance management, overview, and also to increase awareness and compliance, and also awareness and communication in relation to the oversight arrangements with overview and scrutiny. So I'm just going to hand over to Sean just to take us through some of the detail in relation to the process that was involved, but also some of the value for money parts within the relation to the report, and then I will cover off some of the sort of future arrangements in relation to the key recommendations.
Thank you, Narinda. Thank you, Chair. So I thought it might be helpful to just very, very quickly set out what the nature of the arrangements, what the nature of the services are that we share with the other authorities. So for members that have been around for a number of years, and I know a number of members on the committee have, they will be aware that we've been in a shared service arrangement for example, with Trading Standards, which is one of the ones that we're now in since 2010. So we're in our 15th year of sharing, firstly with West Berkshire, and then secondly with West Berkshire and Bracknell. The new shared service arrangement that we've currently got came into being in April 2022, and as well as sharing the Trading Standards Service, also shares a specialist case management unit, which consists of specialist lawyers who deal with litigation and prosecution work in relation to public protection matters, not just within the shared service, but also within Narinda's public protection service as well. Also within there is an intelligence function, a special financial investigation unit. So these are people who deal with confiscation and money laundering, and then a specialist investigation team consisting of trading standards officers and ex-police. And then finally, there is a technical piece of work that we share, which is around air quality. And that just made sense at the time to do that, given that there was one specialist across the three authorities. So the contribution of Wokingham is around 33–34%, depending on which bits that we're talking about. And with Bracknell Forest paying 26, 27, and West Berkshire contributing 40%. And the basis of that contribution is a sort of formula that was used. So it's not based on population, as you can tell, because if it were based on population, then obviously Wokingham would be the biggest contributor. But it is based on a number of factors, such as the number of service requests, business premises, and at that time, things like investigation data, and obviously there are some differences between authorities. So, for example, West Berkshire has hundreds of farms. That's a good example of why there is a difference in some of the contributions, but there are other examples as well that play into that. So that is basically the basis of the service. Now, just to pick up on this issue of value for money, so in the body of the report, you'll see that the peer review team found that it was very difficult to get comparative data for the service, but I have tried to pull together some value for money data, and there recently has been a very big survey done and I think they got a very high response rate through a freedom of information request by the Consumers Association. So within the body of the report, I've referenced an article in there, basically, which has been pulled together. It was one of a couple of articles by the Consumers Association published in Which magazine that showed effectively that there was what they described as a postcode lottery for particularly for trading standard services. So we have, so based on that, they focused on how many officers there were per 100,000 population. So as a shared service across the 3 authorities, we have 4.4 officers, which is less than Reading at 5.15, but greater than, and exactly the same as Slough, but greater than Windsor and Maidenhead at 2.59. I'm not sure really what that tells us, but because I think the key to all of this in terms of value is the ability to share expertise and staffing. And if you look at what effectively all 3 authorities are brought into for the services that are shared, they're brought into a critical mass of officers that consists of, in total, around 35 officers, including 3 lawyers, 3 specialist financial investigators, an investigation team of 6, and then the general trading standard service. So I think probably there may be further questions further down the line around value for money, and I'm happy to try and answer those. One other thing that's worth saying, that in addition to the peer review, at the same time, the peer review did look at finance, but it was decided at the same time that there would be an internal audit of the financial arrangements for the shared service, and that was conducted by the internal audit team at West Berkshire, and they were of the opinion that there was substantial assurance and very good controls in place to manage risk, because it's not a service without its risks, particularly in relation to investigation costs and legal costs. So I'll stop there and hand back to Narinder to just pick up on the final findings. Thanks, Narinder.
Thank you, Sean. So if I just outline, I think just as part of the process, that there was a series of surveys conducted both with members and with staff, and sort of the information around that can be found in the report in relation to some of the common themes in relation to the positives that were outlined in relation to the feedback from both staff and members. So those include things as reduction in duplication of work, increased intelligence sharing, and also the points that Sean just picked up in relation to sharing of increased amount of coverage for staff in relation to trading standards. So one of the other things I did want to pick up just before I sort of outline the key recommendations within the report also is that whilst we do share sort of a service which is wider than just trading standards, and members and others will be alive to the fact that trading standards is a key part of the service that's sort of covered in relation to the shared service, as well as food standards and animal welfare. Trading standards, I think, is fair to say, in relation to some of the risks and sort of the concerns from residents raised in relation to crime and disorder, fraud is one of the key issues that are picked up on in relation to our strategic needs assessment in crime and in the wider sort of crime and disorder body of work that we cover. So we know that fraud losses stand at a staggering 1.1 billion for the UK in relation to just a 12-month period. So that was for 2024. And we know that this makes up around 40% of all crime, approximately. So it's a huge area of work, both for the Community Safety Partnership and also for our trading standards colleagues. So in relation to increases in 2024, there was a third of an uptake, so a third of an uptake in relation to fraud related offences being reported both to police and to trading standards. So as a whole, a third of an increase in the previous year. So this area of work is really taking an increased amount of resources and service demand, but also in relation to that risk factor that Sean was just mentioning, in relation to the risk to the general population. It is now changed in the nature of the work. So not only is the traditional trading standards related fraud, doorstep crime offences on the increase, but in relation to other more sophisticated crimes, HMRC fraud, online fraud, romance fraud, investment fraud. And we know that in Wokingham we have an older, more wealthier older population, wealthier population that is more vulnerable, and that comes through in the service requests and this area of work. So really it is a very, very important and vital work stream that really does affect, for those that unfortunately find themselves as victims, really affects people's mental health, their physical health, their emotional health, in relation to not only emotional but also financial implications around this area of work. So that said, I'm just going to recap really some of the I'm going to recap what is in the report as the key recommendations, which can be found, as I said, on page 23. So the key sort of asks in terms of key recommendations that we're asking the committee to consider tonight are in relation to rejoining of the Joint Public Protection Committee with full membership, including voting rights in relation to the joining of that committee, extending our current arrangements in relation to the Public Protection Partnership up until the 31st of March 2029, with a 12-month break clause included within that. And then we're also seeking recommendation and endorsement around better communication with members per se, Wokingham members, increasing the visibility of this service within the consciousness and actual also the governance and oversight for ONS for this committee. So those are the key recommendations, and with that we're happy to take any questions. Sean, do you want to come in with anything?
Chairman, just with your indulgence, if I just come back on the fraud point, because I think it is a very important point. So as Narinder has said, I can tell you that we are investigating more fraud related matters in Wokingham than in the other areas in terms of loss. Significantly more, in fact, and it is a big area for us. One of the things I forgot to mention when we came to talk about value for money is that one of the benefits of the shared service is we're able to leverage government grant funding to support some of these fraud investigations and also to support the prosecution of that. And as Narinder knows, we've also managed to leverage over the years a significant amount of funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner as well, which has gone into fraud prevention matters and also to some extent victim support. So I just thought that may help just get a little bit more information for the committee. I too am very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the comprehensive update and for the output of the review. I've been involved in licensing since, well, 2003 when the Licensing Act first came in. I remember the PPP when that came in and was set up and the early work that we did on it. And as a councillor in another place, know firsthand the full benefits of what the partnership had done for all three councils. I'm really personally very glad to see that one of the recommendations in here is that we rejoin the partnership. I think it is absolutely the right thing to do for us as an authority and most importantly for the residents of Wokingham, Wokingham Borough, so I would welcome that. Questions around the room? Mary Louise.
Thank you. I've got three two of which probably don't have an answer or can't be answered, but I'll ask them anyway. So, I mean, we all know that one of the problems has been one of the impacts of austerity has been that the whole realm of public protection went from sort of like proactive to reactive. And I was, in terms of emphasis, I know that some proactive work is done, but I was wondering how much of the sort of emphasis that you're giving on fraud is because that's the kind of complaints that you're getting, first of all. The second is a question which I genuinely don't know about the impact of the Competition and Markets Authority. Is that something which the partnership will work with? Because I know that they're intending to move out into sort of like protecting, for example, small businesses and car buyers and others from anti-competitive practices. And I'm wondering whether that is something which this partnership will give us better tools with which to cooperate, or whether, you know, and how you see that. And lastly, because as so often I feel like I've come into a party after something really exciting has happened, I wondered why what was the basis in 2022 for the decision to leave the Joint Committee? Like, you know, and has anything, what has changed that makes that that decision no longer, you know, the basis for that decision no longer valid? I'm only asking because, you know, if there's a reason and it's no longer, you know, no longer matters or it no longer applies, that might be important to know. So those three.
Prue, would you like to comment?
Can I go on? I can do the last one. So I certainly can't do the middle one. And I'm sure officers can have the first go at the first one. So we had more, a bigger partnership arrangement from 2010 onwards, as Sean described, which involved more services. There was a feeling that we weren't perhaps getting the best out of the environmental health in particular, and the Conservative administration had wished to withdraw. I think part of the problem was that a lot of it was branded as West Berkshire rather than being branded as a partnership arrangement. So it was kind of like people thought why Wokingham doesn't have a service or whatever. There was a history of not engaging with the meetings or attending the committees. The representatives did not go. And so the decision was taken to withdraw. Part of the decision was, I think, possibly justifiable in that there were aspects of what was being dealt with that we felt we could do better ourselves, which don't require the technical expertise. I mean, the things that Sean's described, the very technical legal stuff and things like that, we could not deliver that here. But we could do ASB, for example, in a slightly different way in some of the environmental health. So that, I think, was okay. But the thing that really made me cross was that they didn't try and get it to work better as it was. They just said, no, we're not having this, we'll go away. That happened in April 2022. And at that point, we lost all our rights to any decision making. So although we were still part of the partnership for the trading standards and the other bits, we were no longer on the committee. And so we couldn't have any say even over the bits of the partnership with which we were still engaged. So that was one of our things that we wanted to get out of this review, was to get back on that committee and actually have a say on the bits that affect us. And we have achieved that they've bought into it, they understand completely, and I cannot understand why the previous administration wanted that. I don't think there's anybody left who was a decision maker at the time to elucidate that, because I don't think the current Conservatives were privy to everything that went on. It seemed to be a decision by the leader, basically. He didn't like it. And that was it. So I don't think there's any reason to disturb it now. I think there's lots of uncertainties coming in the future, local government reorganisation and things like that. So going into it, as we are, sort of steady as she goes, we're definitely getting benefits from the economies of scale and from the specialist stuff that they do for us. And getting that voice on the committee will help us going forwards. I think we're getting a reasonably fair deal. I think we're getting quite a good level of service. The complaints are way down, so I don't see any reason to disturb it. But I do think it's a really good recommendation that it should not be out of sight, out of mind. It should be coming regularly, at least annually, to the committee so that everybody can review what is actually going on.
Steve, Narinder, is there anything you want to add to the first or second part?
Narinder, would you like to pick up on the first question? So the technical question about priorities. So I'm pleased to report actually that because of the critical mass, we do actually still do a large volume of proactive work. So they include hundreds and hundreds of visits around food standards. So food standards is that product related stuff around contamination and around quality labelling, health claims and all of that type of thing. We do visits to farms and petrol stations and over the year, many hundreds of visits across the borough in a proactive way. In relation to how we prioritise, so we do use a model actually, and it's a model used by the police. So we produce a strategic assessment, which I'm happy to share with the committee, and that is an evidence-based assessment, basically of the things that are going on that pose the most risk. So within that, you'll see that obviously right up there comes this work around fraud, doorstep crime, and everything else. And the reason being is because of the profile and vulnerability of a lot of the victims to do with that. And that is risk assessed against our other work. But as I say, there is still an awful lot of proactive work. Another example of that, for example, is we have an officer now that does nothing but age restricted products shared across the 3 authorities. And that again was funded by grant funding from the Offensive Weapons Grant. And as I say, various other proactive bits of support work. In relation to the second question, I've now completely forgotten what the second question was. Oh, the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority. So obviously the Competition and Markets Authority have done many studies over the years in relation to whether the markets are actually functioning the way that they should. They've looked at supermarkets, they've looked at all sorts of things over the years, and from time to time, basically, local authorities are consulted on those studies, and we certainly basically get back the information from those studies as well, and they do help form part of that strategic assessment about areas where we may concentrate our work. So yeah, there is a tie in there. They do operate on a I suppose more macro scale, in the sense that they are looking at the functionality of markets in their sort of totality, but we're certainly very cited on what they do.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, it's just that since the 24 Act, they've been talking about being more engaged at the sort of like the local level of, car sales. And that's, for example, sort of garages fixing prices, basically price fixing and things. And that is, they are looking at like very low levels. So local levels. So I was just asking, is this joint committee, is that the way in which, is that the level or is that the mechanism through which cooperation would take place? Or it would depend on what they were, what the individual engagement, what the individual kind of intervention was.
Okay, Chairman, through you. So there is a national coordinating body for trading standards, which is the National Trading Standards Board, and they're part of the effectively they're funded by the Department of Business, Industry and Industrial Strategy, or whatever they're called now. I think they still are called that, and they're also the parent. They're also the parent department of the CMA, as you should probably be aware. So there are links across those 2 areas. We do take note of the findings of the reports, and they do help inform basically some of the prioritisation of work for the service. But as you say, that there are constant reviews taking place of various aspects of markets, some of which are obviously beyond our remit, others we may be able to contribute to. Can I just say one thing in relation to the last point? So obviously Councillor Bray has dealt with that, but just to say that it's really important to note that the staff in the service are your staff. I'm your manager, basically, and that's really important. The basis of the agreement that we now have in place, rather than the historical agreement, which was to delegate things to West Berkshire, the nature of the agreement we now have in place is that effectively West Berkshire, somebody has to employ the staff, but they are shared, and they are basically on long-term secondment to all of the councils, so to Woking and to Bracknell. And for that reason, that's why I'm quite happy to sit here tonight, I should say, on SAT, basically to talk about this council, my role within it. I'm very much an officer of this council, and all of the officers that report to me are officers of this council.
Great. Thank you for that, Sean. And thank you, Narinder. Any other questions or points? Moses.
I want to ask a question about the value for money. My understanding of value for money is more like a cost-benefit analysis. So the question is it costing Woking Borough less being part of the partnership in terms of benefits, units, value, or more? Because it seems to me here that SLA is not part of a partnership. So we should be able to say, okay, if we're not in the partnership, get the same level of service will cost us this more. So what, is there a benefit in terms of unit cost?
So,
Sean, do you want to take some?
Narinder, do you want me to just start on that, and I'll come back, because I do know a little bit, as Narinder will do, about the history of all of this. So obviously the decision was taken to leave the partnership in 2022, and there was a discussion about these highly specialist areas of service. Now, clearly, basically, for the contribution that is made, I mean, I'm sure it would be possible for us to run some form of trading standard service internally. You know, that it would be possible for us to do that. But what you're not going to be able to do, and I think what we wouldn't be able to do, is to run a service that could tackle the issues of today. You know, these issues around fraud and these issues around complexities around whether it's animal health on farms or whether it's basically food standards. A lot of these are highly complex issues, and in particular, the investigation of serious crime. And when I talk about serious crime, at any one time, the service is investigating millions of pounds worth of fraud. Both inside and outside the area, because obviously fraudsters don't stop at boundaries. And we have a significant number of cases under investigation in the borough. We also have a significant number of prosecutions, as Narinder knows, already in the court system. You know, that just wouldn't be really possible. And for us as a single authority, it wouldn't be possible for us to attract the grants. So it's not to say that a service couldn't be provided it could. The one thing I would say is that at the time when the decision was made to buy back into sharing these very specialist services, a piece of work, I believe, was done internally at Wokingham, and that piece of work showed that effectively to produce something of the same expertise and quality and everything else would be almost double the cost of the contribution that was made back in 2022. So that's the kind of scale of I think basically efficiency being that we're buying back into with this arrangement.
Prue, do you want to come in first, then Moses?
I just want to, I think part of the difficulty as well is not just it would cost us more, but we wouldn't be able to recruit the specialist staff because we wouldn't have any career prospects for them. They've been a really small authority with it. We don't have enough work of the specialist kind to occupy some. So it's just not a viable proposition. I think you're asking a question which is how long is a piece of string? It depends. Value for money is about what you get for your money, as you said about, as well as it's not just about how little it costs. So I think we need to balance having the services that we need, which have been outlined by the officers tonight, particularly on the fraud side, we just would not be able to provide that service by ourselves. So we have to fund it. It would cost us an awful lot more if we did try to fund it, but we just couldn't do it. So I think it's like comparing apples and pears. It's a bit difficult to kind of come up with the exact figure of how you do it, because I'm not sure it's actually practically possible to do some of these specialist areas ourselves. Apart from we wouldn't attract the grant money and things, but we need, if you're going to employ people, you need to be able to offer them a career, and we just wouldn't be able to do that, and we wouldn't have the resilience in the workforce either.
Just before I go back to Moses, I sat on the previous review when we did this before, but I was at Bracknell. And the comments back then were exactly the same, that this isn't just about if we did it here, this way, it costs us X. If we do it this way, it costs us Y. One of the driving forces behind the benefits of the PPP was the career progression, the ability to attract. All three councils were individually struggling to find specialist people willing to come and work at one council rather than all three. And that the benefits, you get out of it what you put into it, like so many things. And it was a driving force for really good career progression, for the shared expertise, the shared knowledge, the ability to have more highly skilled, highly trained people that had a career progression, that had the ability to work across a wider area. I noticed that one of the other points, and I'll let you come back in, but one of the other points in there, obviously with local government reorganisation, is that scheme was always designed to be a scalable solution that should other councils wish to join, that it could be flexed with agreement and renegotiation. But it was always not just the cost, it was the lack of ability to recruit suitable people that wanted to come and work here with the scale of the operation that all three councils had. Sorry, Moses.
I think you've limited with the concept of cost of money. That's not what I was talking about. I think in the course of trying to answer you actually said it's not achievable, which is one idea of designing a business case for a project. So, because I don't know how Slough does it. Slough has the same number at the moment. So is it that Slough is not getting a good benefit because they're doing it by themselves? That's what I'm asking. So, for example, if Slough is doing it, if Slough is doing it on their own, and why are they doing it on their own, and what are the benefits? So it's fair enough that it may not be achievable doing it solo, but it begs the question is how is Slough doing it? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Prue first?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff is in that Which report, that Slough have got a very small number of people compared to what we've got. So they are doing it. Obviously, we haven't seen what Slough's complaints are like and what their work's like, and that might be interesting for this committee to explore. Because if I was Slough, I wouldn't be doing it by myself. I would be trying to join in with somebody because it's just not practical. And the same goes for the other Berkshire unitaries as well. So I think this is a scalable thing, exactly as Mark described. And there's some reference to that in the report about, as we go forwards, that other local authorities might well join in. But I think it would be interesting for you to get some stats if some are available.
Chairman, can I just add to that, if that's okay? I think it's if you take, for example, a service like, so Slough have a service, obviously, that they have exactly the same staffing numbers, I think, as us per 100,000 population, but what they will have is a very different service. I think basically this is a service that meets the need of our residents and the risks that they face here. I would imagine that some of the work in Slough is probably based around the sort of manufacturing sector and things like that. When I used to work many years ago and cover parts of Slough, that I would imagine it's a very different profile of service for their training standards team. But for us, basically, they're not unique problems, but they are significant issues that I think as a borough that we face for some of the reasons that Lorinda has highlighted. And right up there are these higher risk elements around fraud, doorstep crime, and scams and all of that type of work, and the need to support residents. So as I said earlier on, that there's definitely an affordable service. There's definitely an ability for us to deliver some sort of service in-house. But for exactly the same spend, I guess the way I would put it is it wouldn't deliver what we get now.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. There are a couple of recommendations. I'd like to just on bullet point 3, recommendation 3, which is the engagement with staff. I think with any change, although this is not a huge change, just make sure that we're working closely with all of the officers involved in the function, just to ensure they are fully aligned and fully with this. And I think the other part is with, in 2022, when we, as the press called it back then, PPP exit, it would be, I think we just need to make sure that when we're communicating this out, when the comms team pick this up, that we're communicating the right, this is not a massive change, but this gives us back. So I think just to be really clear on the communications with residents that about what we're doing and why we're doing it and what the outcomes and what changes they will expect to see as a result. With that being said, I'm happy to move those, the kind of the 4 recommendations if we're all in agreement. Is anyone not supportive?
Just subject to that paragraph change that was made.
Oh, sorry. Yes, apologies. With subject to that paragraph being changed. But if we're happy to take that as read with that change in there. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Narinda, for attending. If you wish to stay, please feel free.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I can help with asset management. So.
You're sure? You're very welcome.
Right.
Yeah, no, with that being said, thank you, Lou. We are going to move on to the last substantive item on the agenda this evening, which is the asset management plan. I think Stephen's going to introduce it, and we have Sarah joining us. At least we don't have the air conditioning problem this evening.
No air conditioning problem. Certainly not over here. Well, the draft asset management plan, which is before you in your agenda, sets out the Council's approach to managing its commercial and operational assets in accordance with the Council's strategic priorities. And those priorities, as you can see from the report, are shaped by the community's vision, the Council plan and the Marmot principles. And I'm sure you realise the Marmot principles are about prevention and early intervention to promote better public health outcomes. Now, as this draft asset management plan has been considered by the committee already, it came before you in March, this report highlights the differences between the document you saw then and the current version, and the comments you made back in March have, I hope, been reflected in this new version. And I just wanted to make a more generic point, if I may, Chair. The approach of bringing reports to ONS committees, not just this committee, but ONS committees in general, before any decision is made by the executive, I think is something I really strongly support. It gives all members of all parties the opportunity to contribute to policy and to make corrections and amendments before the ink is dry. And I think that's a process that we should all, I think, support, because I think it leads to much better outcomes. And the only thing I really need to do now is just thank Sarah and Craig Hogarth, who also played a big part in this document being drawn up, and the other officers who were involved in drawing up this draft asset management plan. And I think that's all I need to say, so I'll hand over to Sarah.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for having us back again. So just wanted to as set out in the report, just highlight the changes that have been made to the document since you last saw it in March. The main structure of the asset management plan remains as per the previous draft, with the three main sections of policy, strategy and the action plan, and also the overview of our current property portfolio. And hopefully members of the committee and councillors and residents will find it a useful document in terms of a summary of the current and the extent of the property portfolio. Despite our many checks over and over again, I have found an error in the appendix, which incorrectly on page 44 of the asset management plan, or 74 of your report, incorrectly identifies Cantley Park as being in Twyford. So despite our many checks, we will check again and make sure that we update that one. But well spotted if anyone has spotted it. It wasn't a deliberate mistake by any chance. So we didn't receive any comments either from this committee or from our internal consultation with services, which generated the need for significant amendments to the document. Obviously, the document has been formatted into its current state. The main changes have been around just some more detailed explanation in some of the sections, particularly around governance and how we make decisions about assets, and particularly around our compliance with energy efficiency and our approach to those national and our own policy requirements over the next 5 years. And the action plan has been developed somewhat further just to make sure those actions are smart actions. But it hasn't. There were also some factual corrections that were pointed out to us in the appendices, which list the documentation, list our properties which we've updated. So we would really just sort of welcome the committee's feedback on the updated document, and the recommendation is to ask for the committee's recommendation to executive to adopt the plan. Thank you.
Short, sweet. Thank you very much. Caroline.
Thank you. It's on page, I did have it, 85. I did email about this last time. You've got in there early Swallows Meadow owned by WBC. I thought it was owned by the university, because the signage does say Reading University around it. Lower early, you've got Swallows Meadow.
I will take that as an action to chat, Caroline. Apologies if you raised that before. It might be that we have some dual ownership there, and on the plan it's maybe dual ownership, but in reality the signage is the university's. But I will double check and make sure
and
that's
I think
correct.
the university would be pleased to see they part owned it or just owned it.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's clarified. Thank you.
Anything else? General comment, actually. I think I made this before, but more of a... So there are, in my own ward, being dreadfully parochial for a moment, we know that at future meetings of this committee, we've got items like Gray's Farm coming up. Will those just be added as a refreshed version as those transfer over to us? Because I think we own the asset now. So I couldn't see that reflected under here. I'm just maybe reading the wrong section, but how do we update this as we bring future assets in?
Yeah, so the proposal is that the policy and strategy section of the asset management plan stay relatively static through the 5 years. The action plan we are proposing to review annually, so that will be demonstrating progress on the actions and identifying and recording new projects that come up throughout that year. I would suggest that perhaps we also use that as an opportunity to update the list of our assets as well. We are required to produce and publish every year our formal assets register as well, but that is quite a technical document that's perhaps not quite as accessible to everybody as maybe it could be. So I think it would be useful if we made that commitment that we updated our asset list within this document on that annual basis as well.
And just as the observation, it was really good to see that much clearer distinction of commercial versus investment portfolios, which I think now reads as a much clearer section compared to the earlier draft. So thank you for that. Anything else? No, in which case there are a set of recommendations, and my laptop has just decided to reset itself. Are we happy with the recommendations that are put on the doco? Sorry, my laptop has now come back to life. So that we consider it and then we recommend adoption of the asset management plan to council's executive. Sorry, brain fog tonight. Any comments against? If not, happy to move those recommendations. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And Sarah, thank you for all of the work that you've done on this, and look forward to seeing this go through to exec and onwards.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, last two items of the agenda. Firstly, we're going to be looking at the work programme. We're in that slightly quieter period before we hit the autumn budget setting process. Next meeting is planned for July. Does anyone have any comments about the forward programme that is down there? Oh, that's Grays Farmers in July. I knew it was coming up soon. Any questions on the work programme? No. Okay. And then the final item of the agenda is the action tracker. Does anyone have any comments on any of that, item 12? Caroline.
Sorry, I don't, on the action plan, we talked about California Crossroads and the officers to monitor Crossroads is completed. I presume if there are any incidents, we will be informed. Because as an outcome, it's completed, it's going to be informed. Not sure I quite...
Chair, Chair, certainly obviously a detailed discussion at this committee on the Crossroads, and I think there was a commitment there to, obviously as we would do anyway, to continue to monitor that junction, and I'm sure if there is an event or an issue, then this is the right forum to bring that back into in terms of any discussion if that's a significant event, or if members indeed want an update on the junction. So, but obviously we are keeping appraised of the junction as we go forward.
And I think the other part was that the stage 4 audit, the next audit 1 year post-operation, was due to come back here whenever that's completed. I can't remember when that was, but I know there was it's coming back again.
Well, let me check on that and then see if the forward plan needs to be updated on that basis.
Brilliant. Any other comments? No, brilliant. Hour and a half. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your attendance and questions. I think that's it. Meeting closed.